guys, another chapter 8 video here. We're going to talk about circles some more, and we're going to look at what's the difference between area and circumference. Because honestly, in the end, this is kind of what it comes down to, is a lot of students memorize the formulas, but don't really understand what the difference between area and circumference even is. So it's pretty important that we do get this. So that's our essential question for today. 8.3 is our topic. You're going to have to write the date today, and I'm going to give myself a little extra space with a little more graph paper just because I know I'm going to be writing big for our video. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to be creating a T-chart. We're going to write area versus circumference. Oh geez, I'm spelling things wrong. Let's start that over. That doesn't look very nice. So we're going to write area versus circumference. Circumference. There we go. How did I misspell that? I don't know. All right, so we're going to split this down the middle, kind of T-chart this. That'll be my setup. And I kind of want to get into what do we know. So circles are kind of a special shape. To be honest, when we talk about circles, they're very unique because they're the only shape that's, completely rounded. And so when we go to find things like the perimeter or the area, it's just not as easy as other shapes. Rectangles and triangles have these nice straight lines. It's simpler. Because of that perfectly round shape of a circle, which I'm going to make one right here, we've got to come up with some strategies. I mean, circumference is that distance that is around that circle. So when I just drew that circle, my pen did the circumference. So for circumference, I'll put a little star here. It's the distance around the circle. Distance around the circle. Meaning if I was to walk around the circle, how many steps would it take? So distance around the circle, if I could walk around the circle, I'm going to put a parenthesis here. If I walked around the circle, how many steps would I take? How many steps would I take? Question mark. That's circumference. If I could walk around the circle, how many steps would it take? What's the distance around? And we measure that in inches and centimeters and feet and whatever other measurements we end up coming up with. Versus like area is when we look at the space inside of the circle. So if I was to lay down, carpet, or if I was going to paint the inside of the circle, how much space is inside of there? So area measures the space inside. Measures the space inside. And the space inside, when we measure it in square feet or square inches or square miles, whatever the units are, but we measure it in little tiny squares. And that's where circles kind of get weird, because how can we measure a circle using squares? It's very complicated. So it measures the space inside, and I'm going to put a little parenthesis, measures how many square units fit inside. Measures in square units. And so again, if we were to do this by hand, if I was to draw all the little squares, or if I was to use a piece of string and wrap it around and measure the length of the circumference, that would be really time consuming. That would take a lot of time to do that for every single circle. So we've developed some shortcuts. We found some formulas that work. And for area, we know that area is equal to pi r squared. Pi times the radius squared. And for circumference, we know circumference is equal to pi times diameter, pi d. It's really interesting that that weird little 3.14 pi number just perfectly works for these circles, but it does. So this is kind of what we're using for our formulas. One's for area and one's for circumference. And some things to remember when you get your answer, when you get your units for your final answer for area, you're measuring squares. So you're getting things like feet squared or inches squared, depends on the problem, centimeters squared, etc. But when it's circumference, it's just how many feet were there, or how many centimeters around, or how many inches, etc. So the units for circumference are not squared. That is something to kind of keep in mind. And both formulas, it's probably easy just to memorize them, but I want you to understand what they actually mean. If I'm finding the area of a circle, I'm finding the space inside. If I'm finding the circumference of a circle, I'm finding the space around, the distance around the circle. So we're going to try a problem where we're going to look at both of these now. So let's set up our problem, and I'll just put example. And for our example, we're going to draw a circle that we can kind of study. So here is our circle that we're going to use. I'm going to draw it like this. And the distance from the edge to the center of my circle is 6 inches. 6 inches. So I'm going to write 6 inches. All right, so we're going to find both. We're going to find the area, the space inside, and we're going to find the circumference. So over here I'm going to write area, and over here I'm going to write circumference. I want to do both. Because we know both formulas, we might as well give it a shot. Okay, so which one do you want to start with first, area or circumference? Doesn't really matter. How about area? So the area would be if I could take my graph paper and start cutting it into little squares, how many squares would fill up this circle? But I'm not going to do it by hand. I'm going to use the formula. Area equals pi r squared. Okay, so there's my formula. Now I need to replace my r, my radius, with the number that would go there. So I'm actually going to do area equals pi times a number squared. Now what number goes in here? What's the radius of my circle? Well, the radius, let's see, if you look in the picture, is 6 inches. So we're going to put a 6 in here. So we're going to do pi times 6 squared. Well, that means we're going to do 3.14, that's our pi number, and then 6 squared means we're going to do 6 times 6. 6 times 6 is 36, so we actually have 36 times the pi number, 3.14. Now, if I didn't have a calculator, I would feel pretty stuck at this point, but I do have a calculator handy. So I'm actually going to type this in. I'm going to put in 3.14 times 36, and I'm going to get my solution is 113.04. Now, that's not exactly the answer because I did round my pi value, but it's pretty close. So I'm going to write area is about equal to, what do we get? 113.04. So if I was to chop this circle up into little tiny squares, I could fit 113 square feet squared. Oh wait, it wasn't in feet, it was in inches, wasn't it? Inches squared, excuse me, into my circle. So here's my solution for area, about 113 inches squared. Okay, so that's the space inside. Let's find the circumference around the outside now. So we know if we go up here, let's see, if I shaded my circle in with like a colored pencil, that the space inside of here measures about 113 square inches. That's what we just figured out. But now I want to figure out, okay, what if I walked around my circle, all the way around? How far around the circle is it? That's the circumference. So we're going to switch formulas now. If I'm doing circumference, I'm going to do C equals pi times diameter. And we're going to change that diameter into a number. We're going to figure out, okay, C equals pi times the diameter number. Well, what's the distance of our diameter? I know our radius was 6 inches, but our diameter, it'd be 6 plus another 6. So our diameter is 12 inches. So we're going to do pi times 12, or we're going to do 3.14 times 12, I should say. So again, if I didn't have a calculator, I would be stuck, but I do. So I'm going to grab my calculator and we're going to put in 3.14 times 12 to see what we get. And I got 37.68. So I'm going to write circumference is about equal to 37.68. And that's the distance around the circle, so we measured that in inches. It is about 37 inches around the circle, which is much different than our area answer. So how could I take this even one step farther? What else could I do to prove to someone that I really understand this problem? I probably could write a statement. So I'm going to write a sentence that or maybe 2 sentences that kind of explains what this information is. Like, what do I have here? Okay, so after doing our calculations, after doing my calculations, I found that the area of the circle is about 113.04 inches squared. So after doing my calculations, I found that the area of the circle is about 113.04 inches squared. I also found that the circumference is about, what did we get? Is about 37.68 inches. I also found that the circumference is about 37.68 inches. There's my statement. So this is something by the end of our school year that I hope you'll have totally mastered, that you can look at any circle and you can do these two different things. You can find the area of that circle and you can find the circumference of that circle. But more importantly, you know the difference between what they mean. That area is the space inside the circle and circumference is the distance around the circle. And I'll probably say that many more times in many more videos, but I just really want to make sure that you've kind of got that in your head and you've got that down. Thanks for watching, you guys. Look for more videos on this and ask me questions in class if you got them. All right, bye.